Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining UX Oxford this month. First of all, I want to thank our lovely sponsors, Oxford Capital Consultants, Fruto, and Humand. They help us put our events together, and through having sponsorship, we could run this event for like 10 years, the past 10 years. Just so if this is the first time you attend UX Oxford, it's a monthly event and it's usually in person, but at the moment we're running all of them online. And then hopefully at the end of the year or maybe early next year, we are able to go back to in person and maybe having like a hybrid in person online, something that we're still discussing. So this month, we are very happy to have invited Robin Potter, who is a lead UX designer at Waitrose, and we'll be talking about usability testing. Rob, I think I'll just hand over to you now.
Okay, thanks very much, Mariana. Let me attempt to take control and share my screen.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to start trying to share now, so let me know if it doesn't work. So my presentation should be there, full screen for everyone to see.
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay, great. Hi everybody. Great to be here. My talk today, as you can see, is called "Why Don't We Just Test It?" And no need to introduce myself any further. I think Mariana said I've been at Waitrose for 3 years now, and I'm currently a lead user experience designer. So I'll get straight into it, and I'll kick off with an example from Waitrose from when I first joined. Over the past few years, Waitrose has been in the position of migrating its website onto a new platform, which has allowed us to sort of redesign everything stage by stage and make it more modern. In particular, bring it onto a platform and a content management system that supports it being responsive. There are still parts of the site that aren't actually responsive, but we're gradually sorting that out. So when I first joined Waitrose, the first thing I worked on was migrating the homepage across from the old non-responsive site to the new site. We did some concepts for the homepage, and we used our in-house testing facility to test the design. And so we ran a usability test to make sure that participants could use the new homepage, that they could find the controls they were looking for, did they understand the link labels, could they complete tasks. This was all fine. Should mention at this point, as an aside, that we actually kind of have two homepages at Waitrose. One for all of Waitrose, which includes things like our extra services and specialist shops like Waitrose Cellar, Waitrose Florist, which are actually external links, and a groceries focused homepage. So that's a bit odd, I think. If you look at Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Asda, they all kind of have the same thing, with the actual homepage having links to auxiliary services. So for Sainsbury's, you've got Argos and their bank. Tesco have got mobile phone contracts, that kind of thing, financial services. And then the groceries section, or the homepage for the groceries, is one step behind that. So when we designed the new homepage for Waitrose, we wanted to find out if that setup is really in our customers' best interests, or does it just suit the business to have things work this way? So at the end of the usability test, we went back and we asked users what they thought of the new homepage. We then asked, when visiting the Waitrose website, would you rather land on this page, the homepage, or this page, the grocery landing page? So as you can see from the two screens here, one is sort of beautifully designed, very inspirational, very content focused, and the other one is much more functional and plainer looking. So when we asked this question, 6 out of 7 participants in the session said they prefer to land on the homepage, mainly citing its sort of visual appeal. And the grocery landing page on the right was seen as useful, but overall less appealing. So was this a good question to ask in the usability testing session? Despite having just performed a shopping task and being in the mindset of shopping and doing stuff, were the test participants still simply comparing the aesthetics of the two pages and picking the one that looked nicer? Would they feel the same way using the site to do their grocery shopping week in, week out? If so, how could we measure that in the usability test? So I think what we were doing here with this question, we were asking them to predict how they would feel in a hypothetical future situation. So when we gathered this intel, we were no longer observing their behavior. We were asking their opinion and assuming that their responses were reliable. So this, when I researched this talk, this is what it's known as in psychological terms as affective forecasting. And that is the prediction of one's emotional state in the future. And this is what we were asking of our test participants. Research shows that people are surprisingly poor judges of how they will feel in hypothetical situations. So we weren't really testing which option would best meet user needs. If anything, we were kind of deferring a design decision over to our test participants. And it's far from certain that they were the best placed to answer that question, I think. So this is why one of the most important rules of UX research and design, which I'm sure everyone here knows, is to pay much more attention to what people do rather than what they say or what they say they would do. So, you know, I know this, I think we all know this, but it's still very easy to fall into the trap of asking people, what do you think? What would you do? What do you think you would do? Now, I've got a great example of this where it happened on a large scale and from the world of video games, Halo 2. So any gamers amongst you might be aware that back in 2004, Halo 2 became the first really successful online multiplayer console game. And its major innovation was the concept of matchmaking for its multiplayer component. So in the past, before matchmaking, online gamers would see a screen much like this. They would browse a list of multiplayer servers and choose which one to join based on a variety of factors. So game type, what map was being played, number of players, and then the other kind of specific rules. And Bungie, the developers of Halo 2, wanted something much more streamlined for what they hoped would be the kind of vehicle for bringing Xbox Live, kind of the online multiplayer service for the Xbox, to the masses. And the matchmaking system that they developed took almost all control out of the player's hands. All they had to do was simply choose the broad type of game type they wanted to play, so the team match, free for all, and then the matchmaking system would do the rest for them. Choose the map, choose the rules, and then match players up with people of equal skill level based on a skill matching system. And the idea was this would revolutionize online gaming by making it much more accessible. So UX researchers took this idea and described it to some existing online gamers, PC gamers, using mock-ups and describing the concept. And gamers, they understood what was being shown to them and they all hated it. You know, they liked what they were used to and they weren't prepared to give up the control that the old server browser model gave them. So the UX researchers reported this back to Bungie, suggesting that gamers were likely to, you know, outright reject this new matchmaking idea. And they strongly suggested that the designers should come up with something more palatable. And in turn, Bungie outright rejected the findings of the researchers because they had a strong belief in their matchmaking innovation. So they went ahead and implemented it anyway. So anyone who knows about online gaming or gaming in general know that Bungie were proven right in the end. The designers were proven right. And matchmaking is now the de facto way to play games online. And it's arguably one of the most important innovations for bringing online gaming into the mainstream. So again, this is another example of what I mentioned before, effective forecasting. So the gamers that the researchers were speaking to simply couldn't imagine the improved experience just via a description and via the concepts that were being shown to them. And in hindsight, the researchers realized this and they shouldn't have reported the user feedback without major caveats. They reported it, they amplified it as is without, you know, digging into, you know, the potential problems with that feedback. So the really relevant thing about this story, I think, is that, you know, these are UX researchers with PhD level psychology doctorates. You know, they had extensive training and experience in UX research, and they still fell into the trap of paying too much attention to users' opinions about a hypothetical experience. So what I've sort of drawn from these examples and my own experience is that having the capability to do UX research is one thing, but it still needs to be done professionally with great care. Anyway, back to Waitrose. back then when we did our sort of homepage testing, I feel we were too reliant on sort of small scale moderated usability testing sessions with about 6 to 7 people. We did have other tools available, I should say. So we had Google Analytics, we still have. We had a regular stream of customer comments via a pop-up survey on our site. And we had an A/B testing tool called Monetate in use. However, the design team at the time, the normal workflow was to rely mainly on lab-based usability sessions before putting new designs live. So like, you know, we've got this usability lab in our office in Bracknell. It's a fantastic resource. We're very lucky to have it. But what I'm sort of realized over time is that moderated usability sessions and one-to-one interviews, the kind of thing you would do in a lab, can only be used to assess a proportion of design challenges. I still believe it's probably the most important UX research tool, usability testing. So it makes sense to be set up to be able to do it properly and regularly. You know, this is the book which you know, taught me how to do it on a budget, you know, 10, 12 years ago when it first came out, and been using it constantly ever since. But over time, I've found I've come up against a lot of design issues and conundrums that couldn't easily be solved in the lab, and certainly not in a short time frame. So another example here, here are 3 different menu designs for navigating Waitrose's top level product categories. So is it possible to run a usability study which would determine which one is the best, i.e. which is the kind of fastest to use, most accurate and most pleasant? You know, are the images in 2 of these designs, are they helpful or are they detrimental? What determines whether an image is helpful or misleading? So if we were to put this into a usability session in the lab in a moderated environment, the temptation would be to show participants these 3 designs and either ask them which one they prefer and ask them why, but this wouldn't answer the question. You just get you know, opinions. And alternatively, you'd have to run at least 3 separate sessions, each one with a new set of participants. And even then, you'd get nowhere near any kind of statistical significance as to which design really works the best in terms of speed and accuracy. So with our old setup of just having the lab and Google Analytics and the A/B testing tool, the only way to really test this would be to fully code each solution and run a multivariate test in a live environment and somehow try to measure the speed and accuracy of use. And again, this is, you know, expensive, and it means that the design team will be reliant on the engineers to have the capacity to build those variants and then someone else to run the tests. So, you know, as much as I like usability testing, moderated sessions, the limitations are that it's purely qualitative. You can run a quantitative usability test, but it needs to be done at a large scale, which gets very expensive and very time consuming. You know, usability testing is great for seeing if users understand specific flows and functions, but a bit less useful for really optimizing designs and detecting small yet significant readings. And also when trying to test competing designs or flows across many different devices like mobile, desktop, app, it takes many sessions, you know, usually with, you know, possibly weeks in between each session. And that's without even iterating on the designs and then retesting them. So in an attempt back in the old world to get user feedback, we do our best to gather insights with the tools we had. But this meant that we'd sometimes try and crowbar our design conundrums into the wrong research method. So as a result, I got to the stage where I started to dread it a little bit when we had a design discussion. It ended in a bit of a stalemate with a choice between 2 or more designs, 2 options. And then someone would say, let's just test it, or let's find out what our customers think. Because we didn't actually have the tools necessary to effectively do that within a reasonable time frame. Even worse than that, I was worried that user feedback we were getting sometimes was leading us down the wrong path. And once you do get that user feedback in any form, it tends to become sacrosanct in any organization where you know, an organization considers itself to be customer focused. Then finding some usability testing or other user research sessions is quite hard to row back from sometimes. So since that time, you know, things at Waitrose, I say, have improved in a number of ways. First of all, we've got a dedicated UX researcher in the team who can help the designers ensure that they are gathering insights correctly and reading the results in the right way. So now when someone says, why don't we just test it? Or what do our customers think? We've got a professional within the team who can help us develop our thinking into something more specific and actually verifiable. So now we make sure that we always have a hypothesis for any form of research. So in this format here. So if we think back to my navigation menu example from before, the hypothesis could have been, if I add product images to the menu, then the menu will be faster and easier to use. And I'll know this to be true because users will choose more quickly and with greater accuracy. So having defined a hypothesis from there, you can pick the right tool to carry out an effective investigation. So the problem was then that despite wanting to adopt this approach, we didn't actually have all the tools necessary to do it. So in this example here, although one design might have been better than the others by our own definition, we couldn't yet effectively measure it with enough accuracy. So just to recap, this is what we had before. Going back six months, we had our own lab, which we called Waitrose Pulse, and we had got our own logo for it and everything. Which we could do, obviously moderated usability tests, one-to-one interviews, even focus groups, which we use that for more marketing type activity. We had an ongoing survey that pops up on the site, which allowed us to do benchmarking and gather verbatim customer feedback. Really useful. I love that stuff. We had an A/B testing tool called Monetate, which we still have, and we used Google Analytics for analytics. But since that time, just a few months ago, we've now really widened the range of tools that we have. So these are all online tools: Optimal Workshop for card sorts and tree tests, usertesting.com for unmoderated usability testing, Usability Hub for more quantitative first click tests and 5-second tests, that kind of stuff done at scale, and Hotjar, which does screen recordings of live actual real sessions, produces heat maps, again, based on real user sessions, and also allows us to do sort of per page, very targeted surveys. So now when someone says, why don't we just test it? There's a much higher chance of us being able to say yes, and then turning it around in a reasonable time frame. Fairly recently, we had a live issue on the site that I felt powerfully demonstrated the benefit of having this full set of UX research tools and a hypothesis-based approach to testing. So what we're seeing here is the My Orders page on the Waitrose website. So from here, users can view and make changes to pending orders. For grocery shoppers, as anyone who does their grocery shopping online might have experienced, they're often amended several times prior to delivery, hence the prominence here of the amend order button. And there are more options for the pending orders behind that 3-dot menu that you can see. And so this screen and all the controls available here became massively more important during 2020 as people sort of clamored to reserve slots. There was a massive demand for online grocery deliveries during lockdowns. Weeks in advance, people were booking stuff, and they would do this by booking the slots because as soon as they became available, and then you secure it by checking out. So you need £40 worth of products in your trolley, then you can check out. So people would dump £40 worth of goods into their trolley. Didn't matter what it was, anything to secure the slot, and then they would decide much nearer to the date what groceries they actually wanted and whether they wanted the order delivered at all, or maybe they've got a delivery elsewhere. So over time, we'd had a constant trickle of feedback about this page, negative feedback, in particular, people saying they were having problems with this 3-dot menu, which I just revealed there. So some users were missing, I think, or didn't understand the 3 dots. So they didn't even know you could interact with it or what it did. And other users were reporting that the links within the menu weren't actually working correctly. So we weren't quite sure what the balance of issues that was there. But the net result was that some customers seemed to be selecting amend order when what they wanted to do was cancel their order. And this was leading to a big usability problem because you can't cancel an order once you're in the amend order state. So we had reports of some users going into the amend state, searching around fruitlessly for a cancel order option, and even then trying to kind of empty their trolley in a desperate bid to not have the delivery come to them. And that got them into an even worse hot water, because if you empty your trolley when you're in the amend state, you then haven't got the £40 threshold, so you can't check out. You're just completely stuck. And so you can understand how confusing and frustrating that could get, and how it was resulting in lots of stressed shoppers calling our customer service centre. So in the worst case scenario, this was potentially leading to unwanted orders being delivered. So as I mentioned, people would use sort of placeholder stuff in their trolley. So you potentially have orders going out just with one bottle of whiskey or one bottle of £40 bottle of champagne just being delivered by itself. One colleague who's I think watching tonight told me that he fell into this trap as well. He forgot to cancel an order that consisted solely of a 30-day dry-aged Aberdeen Angus rib of beef that was worth 130 pounds, and him and his wife were vegan. So he'd already was panicking and starting to work out how was he going to store this and divvy it up amongst his family and friends, but he managed to do a last-minute cancellation by phoning up. So in an attempt to solve this problem about people getting trapped in the amend order state when they wanted to cancel, we made the following change. So given that we knew the kind of what was going wrong, we decided to weight all of the order options equally within a single menu. So we weren't placing undue emphasis on the amend option, despite the fact it was by far the most popular thing that people want to do on this page. So we put that live, and as soon as we did, we knew there was a problem. Okay, so customer service center lit up. There was a massive spike in calls from customers who were now suddenly unable to do anything with their pending orders. They couldn't view them, cancel them, or amend them. So it turns out that the technical defect that had been reported before, with that menu there that I've highlighted, for a proportion of our users, none of these links were working. Because we'd now put all of the options inside this menu, we'd actually made the problem worse. So this was a critical issue, so we had to roll the change back immediately. What we couldn't quite tell though from all the reports that flooded in that morning was whether all of the problems came from the non-working links, or whether we'd also introduced a new usability issue here by moving the amend order button to within a menu. Were customers, was it hard to find, or were customers simply not accustomed to where the amend order button was? Were they used to where it was before, and were they just panicking and getting straight onto the phone instead of exploring the interface? So we'd rolled back the design, but we hadn't solved the initial problem, which was getting people to go down the right path to cancel their order, while also ensuring that the amend order function was easy to get to. So we still needed to solve that. So after some discussion, we boiled it down to two potential solutions, both of which would be really quick fixes that we could deploy within one sprint. So the first option, design A, just has a single button for view order. To go to the view orders page, the order details page, and you can do anything you want from there: amend, cancel, whatever. Okay, and design B retained the popular amend order button, and then had a secondary button to the view orders page, again to go through and do the other secondary tasks. So we had these two designs, but we reached the old impasse of not really knowing which one would be the best, and there were different arguments put forward for and against each design. Design A potentially solves the cancel order problem by placing less emphasis on the amend button, but design B was letting people get through to the most popular option more quickly. So then the product owner said the famous phrase, why can't we just test it? The kind of phrase that in the past I would have thought, oh, okay, that's going to put us out weeks. Do we have that much time to? Can't we just fix this quicker? So in the past, we would have had to test each option independently. It could have taken a long time. But now I realise that with our new tools, we actually could test it. And not only that, we could test it immediately. So what we did was we came up with specific hypotheses that we wanted to test for each design based on the specific concerns with each design. So for design A, we wanted to make sure that if we give people just a single view order button, they'll easily be able to amend their order. And the hypothesis for design B that we wanted to test was if we give people two buttons on the pending order card, will they easily be able to cancel their order? So two different hypotheses there. So we gave 10 users this task, and so the task was, you want to make some changes to your upcoming grocery order, so just adding and removing items. How would you do this? And here I'm showing the flow that we hope they would take. They click on My Orders in the main menu, in the navigation menu, in the header, sorry. Then they would click on the View Order button, and then on the order details page, they would hit the Amend Order button. So what happened, right? All 10 participants did exactly what we hoped they would do, without any kind of hesitation or grumbling. So we knew for sure that this design worked really well for this task. So that's great. So then for design B, the task was, you want to cancel your upcoming order. How would you do this? Again, 10 people. What did they do? All 10 people clicked on the wrong button. They clicked on the Amend Order button. We were hoping they would click on View Order and then Cancel Order on the subsequent page. Not only that, they all did it with supreme confidence, so they thought they were going down the right path. So you can imagine that if this was a real life situation and they actually had ended up in an Amend Order state, they would have been sure they were in the right place, and they would have been searching around for a cancel option, and it just wouldn't be there. They would not have thought to back out and try a different way to do it. So I actually also set up a click test to run at the same time, because I wanted to get a more quantitative idea of the scale of the issue. As it happened, the 10-person usability test was so conclusive that this wasn't necessary, but it was running at the same time. So here's the heat map from 25 users. So we wanted them to click on the View Order button, and you can see on the heat map that everyone's clicking on Amend Order, 90% of people. So this backed things up. This gave us a kind of a more of a numerical value that in hindsight wasn't necessary. I guess the disadvantage of this form of testing is we couldn't see what they were actually doing. We couldn't capture their feelings while they were doing it. How easy was it to find the right option? How confident were they? So in conclusion, for this test, we knew that the one button design worked fine for customers wanting to make changes to their order, but we knew that the 2-button design was hopeless for users trying to cancel their order. So I sort of theorized that our customers, or the users we tested with, they saw cancellation as a form of amendment. So we had to be really careful about how we presented these options. And this is a good example about how internal teams can sometimes be blind to a problem they just don't perceive. Within Waitrose, we knew that cancel order was an option, a distinct option, but our users, they weren't necessarily aware of its existence, especially if they couldn't see the option. So they were clicking on the button they could see, confident that they were going in the right direction. So in addition, the original design and the 2-button design is very strongly guiding people down the Amend Order route. It's using our primary call to action styling, and the cancel order option is just not there. And this is by design, because like I said, we know that Amend Order is by far the most popular thing to do, but the usability issues for people trying to cancel were so much worse that we knew we had to sort this out. In fact, the results were so clear that I started to become worried that people might even struggle to cancel their order with design A. So straight away I was able, with the testing tools that we had, to quickly just run another iteration of the test. So just run the cancel order task on design A. So I did that, and I wanted to find out, would customers go down the path we wanted, which I'm highlighting here on the right, or would they still end up clicking on Amend Order? So pleased to say that with this layout and this flow here, all 10 participants confidently went down the right path. So with this presentation of options here on the order details page, we could conclude that customers would pick the right option. So the most amazing thing about all this to me was, being new to having this full suite of tools, was just how quickly we went from first becoming aware of a problem, and then thrashing out a couple of potential solutions, and then being able to test those solutions to a very high degree of confidence. It took less than 1.5 working days from beginning to end to sort this out. And this just wouldn't have been possible with the tools we had before. It would have taken us weeks to get to the same degree of confidence. All right. So I guess in summary then, we're in a place now at Waitrose where we're able to answer a lot more design questions thanks to having the right research tools for the job. In the past, us designers, we rely a lot on past experience and best practice, which is completely fine to a point, but it doesn't always convince stakeholders about what you want to do. And sometimes we were ending up in deadlocks where there was no consensus among the design team about the best route to take. And we'd often end up, like I mentioned before, we'd end up in the situation of saying, let's just test it, but not necessarily being equipped to do that. So crucially now we can do much shorter, much more focused tests around very specific hypotheses, and then we can quickly iterate on these tests based on those findings. So in the example I just went through, the my orders tests, that task took about one or 2 minutes for people to complete. So there's no way we were going to get people into Bracknell, however far they would have to commute, to give them all the introductions and everything, meet and greet, give them a 2-minute test and then send them on their way. It just wouldn't have happened. We'd had to try and, merge it into a longer test with more different stuff being tested, and then you have to kind of wait for that to roll around. The results now can come in within hours rather than weeks. And the lead time, again, is hours rather than weeks. Another really important aspect of this, that I'm really starting to appreciate is that we have no reliance on external teams or factors now. So within the design team, fully within our team, we're empowered and technically able to set up and run tests ourselves with some oversight from the UX researchers to make sure we're doing things in the right way. But we don't have to, get cost centers, get any sign off, wait for the recruitment company to do stuff, all of that stuff, which really, draws things out and, slows things down. We can just do it ourselves as soon as we're ready. So we're in such a better place now. So just to sort of sum up, I guess, what we've learned, you need a wide range of research tools and testing tools to be able to address all UX questions that might crop up. If you don't have the right tools available, then you might end up with misleading insights that could send you down a worse path than if you've done no testing at all. I still think that not everything can be effectively tested without quite an expensive large scale study. We've come up against a few things recently where you would need to really go in depth. So I still think design experience and best practice are still vital to get you a long way along for something testable. But once you have a full suite of tools, you're much more likely to be able to reliably test a wide range of design hypotheses and break any deadlocks that might occur within the design team or within stakeholder discussions. In my opinion now, I think having multiple lower cost tools is much better than a couple of very expensive ones. So, the testing lab that we've got in Bracknell is beautiful. It's got all the cameras, it's got all the devices you need. It's got a mini fridge with refreshments in it. I've had lots of great days in previous jobs in the past, going to nice testing facilities in capital cities, having a nice day out with the one-way glass and all that. But it's all extremely expensive to set up. For us, there's ongoing costs to maintaining our lab, and if you can't do that yourself, you're going to have to hire out a facility. It's all very expensive, and I'm thinking now that budget would be better divvied up and dispersed across a wider range of these kind of, I guess, more modern, lighter weight online tools. I've also come to believe that remote testing is not only much cheaper and faster, but I think it gives better insights. So by remote, I mean, like everyone's having to do now, we can't have people into our lab, we couldn't do things in person. So we've gone on to, obviously doing, using video conferencing software to do it fully remote. So, that's much better, I think. Participants are in their own homes, they're on their own devices. They just seem much more comfortable than they have done when they've been in an unfamiliar lab environment. No matter how good the bedside manner of the facilitator is, you get a lot of people who just sort of clam up and don't seem to act particularly naturally. They're not using the accessories and the screen they're used to. And I just feel like we're getting better results now, and much more quickly as well. And I also think that unmoderated usability tests work well in a really high percentage of cases, just for running short, quick tests very quickly. and it just gets you into a place where you can test little and often rather than running big tests less frequently. So we still do moderated one-to-one interviews and usability testing sessions, but we will reserve it for when much more in-depth exploration is needed, or when the test is very complex. Yeah, so I guess that's a summing up of what I think we've got to in the last couple of years over Waitrose. So thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thanks so much, Robin. That was great, and with a lot of detail, which is great in terms of being very practical. And we've got some questions here, so we'll just go through them. Okay. So the first one is, what's the process when recruiting the right participants?
So is that for online testing tools or for just usability testing in general?
I'm not sure if the person who asked that wanted to give more information, but this was at the beginning of the talk, so I'm expecting it to be more general.
So in general, I mean, so if we have particular requirements, so the users have to be Waitrose customers, or we might want to just talk to Ocado customers, then we would give our recruitment agency a screener with screening questions for what we want. So sometimes we were very specific, but quite often we just wanted to try and get a broad set of people that would represent our personas. And then the only real constraint was that they have to be comfortable using, they must be online grocery shoppers. We didn't want people who are completely new to it or not comfortable doing grocery shopping online.
Great, thank you. Another question is, would you normally test fully fledged designs or prototypes?
Certainly, personally, I enjoy the prototyping side of it, and I'm quite comfortable with it. We got fairly far with our prototypes, so interactive prototyping using Axure. We also tended to apply the final UI whenever we could, if it existed. So if we were using existing, fully 100% high fidelity UI components, we would apply those if we could, just to get things as realistic as possible. Now, I know a lot of thinking is that, you can get there quicker if you do it lo-fi, but what I like to do is get it to the stage where you can simply put together prototypes and compositions by dragging and dropping full fidelity components onto the canvas. And I just find that you then just head off any questions about, oh, well, if it was a final design, then would it be any different? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Great. So there are a few more questions about recruitment here, and I'll just talk about all of them at the same time. So when doing user tests, do you recruit from a particular demographic? And then there is another one. This also relates to a question I had, which is, have you used these online tools for specific user groups or demographics, for example, specific job roles? And another question, do you use panels of participants offered by these tools, or do you use your own recruitment? So in terms of recruitment with these online tools, how do you go about it?
So I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I never handled this in Waitrose. They just turn up, as far as I'm concerned. We just have the screening questions for any requirements that the testers might have. What devices they're comfortable with that kind of thing. And I actually don't know, where we get our panel from. But I think we always tried to get a representation that covered our personas. So we have personas like middle-aged, affluent foodie, ease-seeking worker. We have several of these, and each of the recruits that we had coming in, the participants we had coming in, fell into those categories. So we try and get a broad range. And the question often comes up, I think, about the online testing tools. Well, how does their own panels compare to the panels that you might have built up in-house, or you might use through a recruitment agency? And there's an obvious difference you get with the online participants, that they are much more savvy, and they obviously do a lot of these tests, and you can tell they're much more confident. When they record their videos, they're straight into it. They can be quite critical. So you just have to bear that in mind, I think. And for me, it balances out the nervousness you sometimes get from people who've never done a usability test before, So you get one end of the scale with recruits who've never done it before, to what you get from these online testing tools, and you just have to be aware of what you're getting. You know, very user savvy people, tech savvy people versus people who might be a bit more nervous and unaware of what they're doing.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Another question, was the design A versus design B test run as an unmoderated test? And was that
Yes.
on image mockups or live pages?
Yeah, so it was interactive prototypes, and it was unmoderated, and this is because we wanted to get it done as quickly as possible. So we knew that the task and it was quite straightforward, and we knew that the participants wouldn't go off track too much. We kind of anticipated where they might go. It was a simple 3-page prototype with a drop-down menu, which I actually already had ready to go. It was very easy to get that ready. So I knew that I could, prepare that within an hour or two, put it live onto usertesting.com, and then within one more hour, we had all 10 videos back from each session. So that was what was so great about it, was it came in so quickly.
Yeah. Another question, is this change live? So was it a real usage like matched with the test results?
Yeah, so we put the version live that performed the best, and it's live now. And there's been no complaints. Like I said, we used to have a trickle of feedback and complaints about cancelling orders, and could people do it? They were getting stuck in a loop or whatever. And now it's just died out completely. We don't get those comments at all. I'm not sure about the customer service center where the calls have dropped off completely, but I think they have. So I think we're going to go back and maybe, because that was a quick fix. All we were doing was changing a couple of buttons and where they led. So we might go back. I think we're going to go back now and revisit and maybe reintroduce a menu. But yeah, it is a live thing, and it's live now, and it has worked.
Cool. Another question, the size of changes was quite large in the homepage example. Were there any differences in your testing methods compared to the smaller amend order example, or largely the same?
Yeah, so I guess that's the whole point of what I was talking about, really, is that back then we tested that. Obviously, we tested the homepage, but things were moving at a pace, and we had a testing session I think it was only once a month. It might have been once every 2 weeks. So we really only had time to do a couple of iterations before stuff had to go into sprint. So that's why the testing was quite sort of lightweight, and we couldn't iterate too much, because that was all we had time to do, really. We didn't have the tools to get really specific and test different aspects of it. All we could do was, get to a concept that we felt was, what users wanted, and then really just do some fairly straightforward usability tests. And that's how we ended up just saying to people, what do you think of this? Do you like it? Or which page do you prefer? And that's where I think there was a problem, and where we wouldn't do that now.
Yeah. Great. I think that is all the questions. Thanks so much, Robin. That was really useful and very kind of specific techniques, which are always good to, for us to take away for our kind of day-to-day work, which is really, really great. I'll just bring my slide up just so I can show our lovely sponsors again. Great, yeah. So thanks so much, Robin, and thanks everyone for attending. I want to thank our sponsors, Oxford Computer Consultants, Fruto, and Human, and also thank the other organizers